back at it again, here with the second portion of the Mask 3 lesson. Let's get started. We're going to open up the file we were working with the last video. So it should be saved in your lessons folder as Mask 3, or if you saved it as something different, locate that file. We're going to open up two new files. They are also in the Mask folder, so Computer Courses Art, Computer Graphic Lessons, Photoshop Lessons, that Mask folder. And this time there should be one called STEM and one called Fruit Assorted. I want you to open up those two by holding down the Control key. We're going to finish up today with talking about matching colors, refining an edge, and then we're going to talk about how to apply a gradient mask, and then also how to clone over parts of a background image or other layers so that in your layers panel things have the correct overlapping. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to zoom in on our cantaloupe here. So I've already got a little bit of a head start on you guys. If you can see here, if you look at the top part of my cantaloupe, you'll see how this edge is really, really crisp, and it looks as if somebody cut it with a pair of scissors. Where on the bottom, it's nice and gentle, and you can kind of see it's blurry a little bit. You want to do this in mask simply because our eyes as human eyes are pretty weak. The human animal have very, very poor eyes, if you haven't learned this from biology class. And so we can't see really crisp, clear edges. So that's why one of the tricks in Photoshop for montaging, which means to seamlessly piece together two images, is to make the edges just slightly blurry. A couple ways that you can do that. One way is that you can paint with a mask on set on gray. So let's go ahead and try that, and then I'm going to show you a slightly easier way. So the first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we are on the correct layer, which should be this grape layer, and I'm going to actually rename this. So let's go ahead and stop the video and do that now. All right. The next step is we have to click on the mask. So if you look over here on my screen, if I click on the little black thumbnail of the mask, that's now going to automatically put me in mask mode. Grab my brush. I'm going to click on the foreground color, and you're going to select some form of gray. So just stay on this edge of the color picker. Next step is you want to make sure that you have a soft edge brush. So one of these in here, not the one at the top. These soft edge brushes, they just don't have a crisp edge to begin with. And then you'll paint. Now, and this is where it just takes some fine tuning. And you have to know when to go a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, when you're blocking out, when you're letting some show through. It just takes practice. It's not the easiest thing to do, I'll be honest. And that's why I said I'm going to show you an easier way. So think about black is going to kind of block out. So I need to go all the way back out. And this is where it's almost like shading. You just have to shade that in. So you can work with the shades of gray to kind of blend that in. Let's see, we're here. I want to get a little bit lighter. It's just making it so it's not so crisp. The easier way, I'm going to reset my colors here. The easier way is actually to leave it set at black, but to go up here in your options bar and take your opacity way down. So you're still painting with black, but it's just not as thick of an application. And then just brush across that edge as many times as you need to. So that way you're not having to switch and decide, well, how gray or how dark of a gray do I have to have? I can just keep clicking over. The more you click, the more it's going to soften. So I'm just clicking with my brush here. So go ahead and try that now. Try it with taking down the opacity. All right, now that you're back, first thing we're going to do, let's take that opacity, put it all the way back up because we'll forget to do it later, and let's go to File, Save. All right, next on our agenda here is to match colors. So obviously here our grapes are purple. They do not match the cantaloupe at all. So we're going to make some color changes. Look over here in our panels. We are still in mask mode. So if I do anything, it's going to apply it to the mask. We need to click back on the thumbnail because we're actually going to change the coloration of the grapes. So click on the thumbnail of the picture of the grapes. Remember, all of our color adjustments are up in image adjustments. This is all the way back to the very first unit. And let's go ahead and go to hue and saturation. We could also go to color balance. It's just your preference, how you want to do this. And we're going to take our slider and we're going to try to match this, so we're going to try to make it a little bit more yellow. You can mess around with your saturation if you want to take it up or down to try and match the outside of the cantaloupe. You can also take the lightness up or down. It's up to you. And click OK when you're happy. Go to File, Save. All right, double click the hand tool to zoom out. There you go, somewhat believable. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on now. So we've already done matching our colors and messing with the opacity of the brush to refine a mask edge. Now we're gonna go ahead and we are gonna do some really cool stuff with a gradient mask. So go ahead and grab that fruit assorted file. And we're gonna jump ahead a little bit. We're not going to apply a mask. We're not going to drag this whole thing on, which normally you would do. And this is where you just have to be a master of Photoshop. You have to know when you have to pull the whole image on and when you shouldn't. Because we're going to apply a very specific type of mask afterwards with the gradient, we're not going to pull the whole thing on. I just want to pull on a circular selection. And I know this is a simple selection, so I'm going to grab my elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to click in the center of the orange. I'm going to click and I'm going to pull just a little bit. Now I'm going to hold down my Alt key because I want to make sure it radiates out from the center. And I'm just going to grab a round selection of this bottom orange slice. Stop the video and do that now. All right. Switch to our Move tool. Grab that selection. I want you to drag and drop it onto our cantaloupe. Go ahead and close that assorted fruit file. All right, we're going to make this approximately the same size as this front cantaloupe. So we're going to free transform this. You may or may not choose to hold down the Shift key, totally up to you. And it's okay if it comes over the corner of this cantaloupe a little bit because you're going to see why in just a second. All right, so right now there's no mask on it. We are going to put a mask on it. We're going to put a gradient mask. So remember, gradients go from dark to light. So before we do this, I want to make sure my foreground and background colors are set to the default. So click on this button here if you need to. Make sure you're on the orange layer. In fact, let's rename this orange. Okay, stop the video and do that now. All right, next thing we're going to do, we need to go into mask mode. Click on Quick Mask. We're going to grab our gradient tool. Before we go any further, you need to make sure that your gradient is set from black to white. If it's not, click on the drop down and select it. We are going to apply a radial gradient. Radial, remember, that goes in a circular fashion. You can use any of these you want, and I would suggest playing with them, but for this one, right now, we're going to go to radial gradient. We're going to click in the center of our orange slice, and we're going to drag out to the outside center. And we're going to release. You should get, it should be like kind of a red glow here. We've applied a mask, a gradient mask. I want you to click on your Quick Mask button to get out of that. We do need to flip this selection. So let's go to Select, Inverse. Now we're going to apply it as a layer mask. Think this through. How do I apply this as a layer mask? Right, we're going to go over to our Layers panel, double click that I'm on the orange layer. I'm going to click that button. Now what we've done is we've got the center part here, and see how it blends out. If it's too much, like if it fades too fast, I can undo that, or I can just go back on my mask and I can try to reapply it again. So if I can click here, I would have to inverse that, but so you can have some fun doing that. So that's the gradient mask. It also works the same way for the linear. So if I were to switch this to linear, it would do it in one direction rather than around the outside edge. But let's go ahead and go to File, Save. All right, last thing here, guys. All right, we're going to go ahead and this time we are going to grab the entire image of our stems, and we're going to pull that onto our image here. What we're going to do is we're going to take this apple stem here, we're going to put it on top of our strawberry. Okay, so let's turn everything off for a second except our apples. We're going to zoom in. We're going to do our cheat method here. So I'm going to grab that quick selection. We may have to take our brush way down. And I want you to select just that step, okay? Go ahead and go into quick mask mode if you need to, and then refine it. All right, that's good enough for me. We're gonna get out of quick mask mode. I always do that wrong, guys, every time. I should be a better teacher for you. Okay, once we've applied it, we have the marching ants just on our stem. We're gonna click on that, and now we've got this lovely little stem. All right, go ahead and turn the rest of your layers on. We're gonna take our stem. Notice I clicked on the thumbnail of the picture because otherwise it would just move the mask. And we do need to put that entire layer on top of our strawberry. Here's the problem. You still see our entire strawberry stem. Doesn't look believable. So let's go ahead and click on actually the background layer. So we need to clone over the strawberry stem. We want to get rid of it. I could do two things. I could mask it out. I'm going to show you another option because this works better when it's on the background layer than you can't mask out. We're going to clone over the stem. So we're going to grab our clone stamp tool, double check that we're on the background layer, make your brush an appropriate size, and then I'm going to clone, I'm going to sample from a little bit to the right of the strawberry stem. I'm holding down the Alt key to sample. I'm going to click and hold. Then before I paint, I have to click back on the strawberry layer. Resample if you need to. Oops. I forgot to go back to my background layer to do my resampling. So see, I'm switching back and forth. I sample on the background layer. I click on the strawberry layer to paint. Sample on the background layer. Click back on the strawberry layer to paint. Okay, you get the general idea. And then you can move your stem layer if you need to. Move that in a more appropriate spot. And double click our hand tool. And there you go. There's our cherried stem strawberry. A little weird, a little different, but using it mask. Make sure you go to File Save before you close out on this. Double check your notes, go back over them, make sure that you have everything that's asked for you on the note sheet, and when you are done, you may close. Good job.